Hi everyone, it's Friday, so it must be coffee and chat. It's raining in Oxfordshire today, and I look out my window to the guys that are building some amazing new, I don't really know what it is, space thing, I think. And despite the fact that we've got thunder and lightning all around us, they're still going up in cranes, up and down, which seems to be the most bizarre thing you could possibly do. But never mind, I don't have any coffee today. I've got my water bottle yet again. I'm really pleased to be joined by Charlie Welsh, who we have known each other way too long, 30 odd years. We used to get mistaken a lot in the past, mainly because she was obviously brilliant and I was not. I was quite happy to be mistaken for her. But that doesn't seem to happen so often these days because we don't get to see each other so much. Charlie's here to talk to us about an amazing thing called Native Genius. Unfortunately, her Native Genius is not making her camera work because she can't get it to come up today, but she tells me she's been bitten by a hornet. So she is quite happy that it's only my camera that's working rather than hers, which I'm a little bit alarmed at as well. As normal, if you've got any questions at all for us as we go through today's chat, then please do just pop them in the chat button and I'll pick them up as and when I see them. But Charlie's far more than just Native Genius, and I'm going to ask Becky if she'll take us on a slide before we start talking about Native Genius itself. And there are a couple of things that Charlie has been very involved in the last few years. One of them is the Prince's Trust, and the second is helping members of the armed forces community, particularly wives and husbands, to get into an employment. So I really want to share the next 20 odd minutes with you and explore all those areas if we can at all. But let's start. As normal, we'll finish at past because I know for some of you that's really important that we finish on time, so that's our intent. So Charlie, really, what is this Native Genius? Because you threw me completely when you said we were talking about Native Genius. What is it?
Well, Kath, thank you very much for the lovely introduction, and it's super to be here. Hello everybody who's attending. Native Genius, I suppose if I take you back to when I was growing up, and almost every Sunday my father used to take me walking in the Peak District and I loved being in that fresh moorland air, just being active, appreciating nature. And then there was Miss Gardner, my incredible geography teacher. And she used to take us up to the top of the Peak District, top of the Lake District mountains, and with enormous arm gestures, tell us about these huge glaciers that carved out these wonderful U-shaped valleys. And I was hooked. Geography was my thing. And off I went to Birmingham University. And we had to do a dissertation. And they said you can go anywhere in the world and study anything vaguely geographical as long as you fund it. And I'd seen some photos of glaciers in Iceland, and I said, that's where I'd like to go. And I ended up studying paleoentomology, which is the study of fossilized species. Brought them back to the lab in Birmingham and spent months by myself looking down a microscope, very lonely, doing this detailed work, dissecting beetles, many of which got squashed in the process, but actually feeling very unhappy and very unfulfilled. But I was conscious that there were other students around me. There was one particular chap, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember his name, but for him, he loved it. He loved that methodical sifting, that data analysis, that step by step, and being by himself and working quietly. And that was so not my Native Genius. And then, as you know, you and I met when we were both serving in the army. We ended up both at Sandhurst. And I had been in the Officer Training Corps at university, and I'd loved it. And I'd loved being around other people where we had a shared purpose and we were outdoors and we were active and we were getting stuff done. And so I think very much at Sandhurst, we were there, we were supporting one another. And that digging deep, that being outside, that being able to see the good in other people and spurring them on, that struck me as much more my thing. And I remember being given my first platoon of 48 soldiers. I don't know how many you had in your platoon, Kath, but
educator. So my first company I had 32, but I was attached to them. So educators, we didn't command anyone until we got to OC, so quite some time.
Yes. Okay. So we were given 48 young soldiers. Many of whom came from broken homes who
Absolutely.
they didn't really understand what they had going for them. And I suddenly realized that what I loved doing was getting to know them, spotting exactly what they were doing well, and telling them that, and watching their faces light up. And then, you know, along with this fantastic team of corporals and sergeants, we were all working together to that point where on the parade square on that final day, they were passing out in front of their friends and family who couldn't believe that fantastic transformation.
So is the native genius, is it your passion? Is it the thing that you're good? What is this term, native? Is it what you're good at? Not what you're doing, but necessary, because you can fill your time, obviously, with stuff that you just do as routine, but that's probably not your native genius.
No, it's much like strengths, Kath. And I know some people listening might well have experience of strengths work, strengths finder, strengths scope. The idea behind native genius is that this is something much like being in flow. You do it naturally, you do it effortlessly, you do it without being asked. You would do this even if you weren't being paid. And it could be a series of small actions. You know, your native genius will have lots of different elements to it. So, for example, in mine, the getting to know them piece is something that I love doing and I do effortlessly. Well, the other element to native genius, apart from you're naturally quite good at it because you enjoy doing it and you've practiced it a lot, is that you're doing it in service. There is a purpose, there is a meaning to it. And where you can find these elements of your own journey, your own story, where if somebody gave you this task, you would happily do it all day. It gives you satisfaction and you know you're making a difference. That's your native genius.
Oh, so you've got to, can you recognize a native genius in someone else, or is it something that you inherently know that is your passion?
So I would say that my native genius is spotting the native genius in other people. So that's why it's my thing. It's why it's the thing that I'm passionate about. I think if you're in training and development, it probably comes to you more readily. Typically, it's seeing what other people do naturally. It's having that ability to see that for some this might be quite difficult, but you do it instinctively, intuitively. And so if you're on my team, I'm going to give you more of that because I know that you will be more motivated. I know that there'll be less absenteeism. I know you'll be more productive because you're doing the thing that you love doing and you find easy and you're jolly good at.
Yeah, so if you were looking after a whole team, which obviously a lot of managers are, and a lot of people that follow us on our Coffee and Chat are, would you be trying to work out the native genius of all of your staff?
Yes, I would definitely be helping them to reflect on their own journeys and say, give them some time and maybe do it in pairs. Do that they have their own coffee and chat to explore their own native genius, and then they feed that back into the rest of the team. And for some people, well, I think it's another thing that I found is one little element of my own native genius is I love the quality control. I love it when somebody gives me a piece of work and I can scan through it and go, oh, I can make that even better, the even better if. And actually, if people on my team, my business partner used to call it fairy dust, which annoyed me a little bit. And so I had to actually say, I think it might be quality control. But now they know if they want to run something by me, I thrive on that. I really enjoy it. That's what I love to do. So I think the real value is when we know the native genius of everyone on our team and we can share that. So funnily enough, I Googled native genius yesterday. It's a phrase that I've been using for many, many years. And I came across a TED talk and I came across an organization in America who have trademarked this lovely phrase, native genius.
Yes.
Yes, Kristin Wheeler, and her understanding of native genius is exactly the same as mine. And I sort of feel like I'm the scientist who's been working on a project for years and years, but on the eve of publication of my paper, I find some other scientist has got there. But I actually emailed her yesterday to say I'd love to work with you in the UK, because this is what I love to do. I love to help people find their native genius.
Yeah, you ought to, Charlie, because genuinely, my first go-to when you suggested the topic was to do a quick, oh, okay, what's going on here? A quick search on Google, and I came up with her and her TED Talks, and I thought, well, why am I not seeing Charlie doing exactly the same type of TED Talk over here? And you really ought to, because you're brilliant at that sort of thing. Can we move into your Prince's Trust work? Because I know that most of the work that you've been doing in Native Genius has been with Prince's Trust up until now, along with other clients, but a huge amount of the work and that, the applause that you've been given has been for Prince's Trust. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing there. Again, I think that's supporting people that are under the age of 25 with finding the right route for themselves.
Yes, exactly that. It's sort of 18 to 30. And for us, it's all about enhancing their employability, accelerating that early career. So we set up the company Flying Start XP about 4 years ago. And we were looking at helping young people in those first steps. And we realized that it's all about self-awareness, that there's not a lot in the national curriculum that helps them understand what their native genius might be.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because I've been horrified. I've been working alongside the Navy, actually the Royal Navy in the UK recently. And the one thing that I was very surprised when I started to look at careers work, having done a lot of careers work in my early years in the military, and prior to that, when I worked for Marks and Spencer's, would you believe, I couldn't quite believe that careers function really hadn't changed that much in schools until quite recently, when they brought in something called the Gatsby Principles. And the Gatsby Principles get you to look far more at the individual and their native genius, as you're calling it, than has previously been done, to work out what the strengths and weaknesses are of that individual. But I was really surprised at how little work had been done in that region up until that point. But I know the Prince's Trust work that you're doing has taken a lot of applause. Are you finding that it is really supporting people, that people are coming back for more?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, if I just give you a couple of case study examples, one young lad came out of prison. His name was Lejay Taylor. He arrived on our course morning one, sitting back in his chair, head down, really disengaged. And by the end of sort of lunchtime of day 2, he was saying to me, right, Charlie, I've got this sort of interview at a community centre, but I've got to run an icebreaker and I don't know what to do. And the belief just over that 24-hour period, because he knew what his key strengths were, he knew that he could communicate, he knew what his values were, he understood what really motivated him, and he subsequently became a Prince's Trust ambassador. And 3 months later, he was in the House of Commons, he was in the House of Lords, speaking about knife crime.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Met him on morning one, you would never have believed it. He was the same guy. He's now a good friend, and he's doing superb things. He's working for Croydon Council and doing brilliantly. So
I've got a question in from Mark, and he's asking quite a relevant question for most managers. Most people, when they're working in a large organisation in particular, not so much for a small organisation, we're only a small organisation, so it tends to be a bit more all hands to the deck. But in larger organisations, people have job roles, and it could well be that their native genius is outside their job role, which obviously for a line manager could be an opportunity for them to move into a different space. But if you're coming to an annual appraisal and you're having that discussion with the person about how they're getting on, how they're improving, is what you're suggesting that you also should be digging deeper into their strengths in order to say, actually, maybe this role is not for you, and the opportunity for development is actually in this direction rather than where you are? Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly that, Kath. I'm thinking, put people where they are deploying their native genius, because that's where they're going to add most value to the business, and they're going to be thriving. You'll have less absenteeism, more productivity, but have that conversation with them. It's about spending the time for them to understand what those tiny little elements are of their native genius. You know, it is an assemblage of things that all come together in that package. And
So
yeah,
how do they do it? Because if somebody was going to ask me my native genius, then my instant reaction would be that I like helping people. You know, I am likely to go out of my way to do that service piece, to do that payback, to help the communities that I've come from, and to help people I know and love. But that would be my instant reaction to, you know, it's a service piece, it's a payback piece. But how would you advise people to identify how they identify this native genius?
So I would say that's the big picture, Kath. The service piece is your big picture. What would be a good way of doing it would be go through your life journey, go through your working journey, and say, okay, at those times when I really felt I was thriving, I knew I was adding value. Specifically, what was I doing? And actually, even if you just take the last 2 weeks with your employee and say to them, okay, in the last 2 weeks, when have you really felt this buzz of, I love this work, I really enjoy what I'm doing? Specifically, what were you doing at that moment? So was it in that meeting when you were encouraging others to share their ideas? Was it when, as a team, you worked really hard together and you knew that you'd done all the behind the scenes work? What were the specifics that you were doing that you were thriving on? Where were you? What was the environment? Who were you with? What were all the settings that allowed your native genius to come up? When did it happen? Is it more likely to happen in the morning? Is it more likely to happen in the afternoon? What was the purpose that you were driving towards? So it's really just analysing that in as much detail as you can. And find some access to tools like See Me colour profiling and strengths, and just to help drill it down a little bit more. Great, definitely do that.
So we're running out of time, and I thought that we were going to struggle on this one, but you've got so much to say, and I'm really interested in what you're telling us. So can I just bring us on to, I know that you've been a big champion for the armed forces, and particularly for wives that are trying to find work. Can you just give us a couple of minutes on what you're doing in that space as well?
Yes, certainly. So I have to be really honest and say that I have been so busy in the last year or so, I haven't done very much for them. But there is a magnificent organisation called Recruit for Spouses, and it's run by the most wonderful woman, Helen Kendrick. And I really recommend that you get her on for coffee and chat, Kath, because she's done superb work. She's worked incredibly hard and had fantastic results. So she became a Google entrepreneur. She won the David Cameron Big Society Award for the difference she was making in bringing the value of military spouses. You know, the fact that they are so resilient, that they're so flexible, that very often they up sticks and move every 2 years. If you chat to a spouse whose husband's been in the full 22, then she may well have had up to 18 or 20 different postings.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, that absolutely means they can turn their hand to most things, because it's not just organized, it's not just a change of work, it's a change in their lives. They're running the education, they're running their families as well. It's
and
phenomenal.
Resilience, frankly, and at the moment, you know, resilience is the one key skill, or the native genius that everybody is after. So yeah, I completely agree with you, Charlie. We have consumed our half hour, and we promise always that we will finish at past. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really, really grateful. I'm sorry we couldn't see you, but it's really grateful to hear from you. Guys, next week we're moving topic completely. We're going to negotiation, and whether it's possible to negotiate through virtual means. You know, how do we work body language through virtual means? How are we negotiating some of these massive deals that we're having to negotiate at the moment as a country through virtual means? We have an international speaker with us. He is an author. His name is Kjell Jensen. I'm really excited to be talking to him. He is one of our contacts in the business, and I think that some of the things that he'll have to say will be absolutely brilliant. Charlie, thank you so much for your time. I'm really, really grateful, and I'm sorry we couldn't see you. We couldn't quite work out the technology. Hopefully we'll catch up soon face to face. I think there's a plan brewing to catch up in the autumn, but hopefully it will be soon. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Take care.
Thank you very much indeed, Kath. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.